variants have emerged repeatedly from locations all around the world, radiating out in phylogenetic space from the original strain that first emerged in Wuhan, as illustrated here. The virus is now competing with the human immune system and with itself. The mutations that first began to appear last year and now have accumulated to an unprecedented extent in Omicron and the sublineages that have spun off from it raise significant concerns about the phenomenon of immune escape, the ability to evade the neutralizing antibodies elicited by our vaccines, as well as the monoclonal antibody therapeutics that we have developed. Such mutations almost certainly increase the risk of breakthrough infections, and over time, they may reduce the protection against severe disease afforded by our current vaccines. And remarkably, it appears the virus has become more transmissible with each new wave, reaching levels of infectiousness that few human pathogens have ever achieved before. As I told the World Health Assembly in November last year, the point at which the Omicron variant was beginning its infectious march across the world, the SARS-CoV-2 virus is a ruthless opportunist. We are all fatigued by the pandemic, and our political leaders are now preoccupied with other crises: severe global inflation, the war in Ukraine, massive food insecurity, accelerating climate change. But where COVID is concerned, we mustn't lapse into complacency. We are far from being able to say that the pandemic is over. The virus is circulating at probably unprecedented levels, and the number of recorded deaths, which in May slipped briefly below 1,000 a day for the first time in more than 2 years, have begun to tick up again. Even as we emerge from the years of lockdowns and masks and things begin to return to normal, we must acknowledge that so far we have not beaten SARS-CoV-2. We must also recognize urgently that so long as the virus continues to circulate at such intense levels, it were as if we were in a boat with an unchained tiger. Countries, starting with the UK last month, have begun to approve updated vaccines. But I would submit that we must get beyond chasing each variant of COVID-19 as it emerges. Taking boosters every 6 months or whenever the virus evolves hardly seems a sustainable global strategy. We need to get ahead of the virus, and to do that, we need to develop a next generation of broadly protective, variant-proof vaccines. We need vaccines that provide durable immunity against symptomatic disease, not immunity that wanes within months. Ideally, we need vaccines that prevent transmission, although from a scientific perspective, this may be difficult to achieve. And if at all possible, we want vaccines whose protection extends beyond COVID to other coronaviruses, both those we know about, SARS-1 and MERS, and those that have yet to emerge. The emergence of a coronavirus that combined the transmissibility of COVID-19 and the lethality of SARS or MERS would be catastrophic. We must and can eliminate this threat. At CEPI, working closely with partners in the US government who are making similar investments, we have begun to support the development of vaccines that we hope will protect against a wide range of COVID and coronavirus threats. So far, we have funded 11 such projects from around the world, including one here in Korea. We have invested up to $50 million to support SK Bioscience to use the same technology that it used in SKYCoV-1 to advance a globally accessible vaccine that could future-proof us from novel COVID-19 variants as well as other coronaviruses. To protect the world more generally, we also need to look beyond COVID-19 and beyond the coronaviruses. Epidemics happen all the time. We are facing a large global outbreak of monkeypox as I speak, and new viruses are constantly being identified. The next pandemic, as we well know, is not a matter of if, but when. So we need to be prepared, not just for the viruses that are plaguing us now, but for all potential viral threats. The bad news is that there are a lot of these. The good news is that being prepared doesn't require us to have a vaccine against every potential threat. To date, perhaps 260 or 270 viruses have been documented in humans, and these all fall into roughly 25 viral families. And we actually have vaccines against diseases from at least 15 of these families. Although so far, the vaccines against COVID are the only ones produced on what I would describe as a rapid response platform. In at least one case, with the vaccine originally developed to prevent smallpox, we have a vaccine that protects against every known virus from its family, the orthopox viruses, which is why when the monkeypox epidemic began, we already had licensed vaccines, and in fact, therapeutics as well. By developing vaccines against a small set of what I would call prototype pathogens from each family, we can give ourselves a massive head start in developing vaccines against future pathogens. The proof of concept is our COVID vaccines. We were able to develop them so rapidly precisely because we had invested in the development of SARS and MERS vaccines. We cracked the code for coronaviruses with those vaccines and then applied what we knew to COVID when it emerged.